All right, so I reached out to Dan White, who's normally on 1:30 on Wednesdays, he or someone of his team, and today's a little bit different, very busy, a lot of things going on, but there's something in addition to his tip that I really wanted to bring on Dan White for you listening. This is really important stuff. Banks got a downgrade from Moody's, including M&T Bank, which is very, very popular around here. And I'm wondering, okay, what does this really mean? So let's get to Dan on this and maybe a couple other topics as well. Dan, thanks for being on, sir.
Well, thanks for having me, Rick.
All right. Oh, for people who don't know, Dan is a financial planner. He specializes in retirement income. He and his team research so much, whether it's taxes, government policy, and now this. So what's your take on this?
Well, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people that might just glaze over this and not even think about it. But, last week, Fitch, another major ratings agency, downgraded U.S. government debt. So, again, we had the S&P lower us probably about 10 years ago. Now Fitch has lowered us. I think that is not – I don't think they're really worried about government debt. I think they worry about the bipartisan and the debt ceiling that we tend to go through, that rigmarole every couple years. And They just don't have a whole lot of confidence in our government. I don't think it's the debt. It's more the government. But
that's true.
But then Moody's did come out. Moody's came out and they published warnings about potential trouble ahead for banks. And in particular, they downgraded 10 small and mid-sized U.S. banks and said it's considering the possibility of downgrading other major lenders such as U.S. Bancorp, Bank of New York Mellon, State Street, and Truist. Now, Truist, we run into that a little bit with the people out in Chester County because they took over, I think, BB&T or something like that. But some of the banks you mentioned, Rick, are M&T, Pinnacle. They also changed the current outlook to negative on 11 banks, including Capital One Financial, Citizens Financial, and Fifth Third Bancorp. So they're saying that these banks have a large exposure to subprime borrowers. There's that nasty word again we remember from the crisis, subprime mortgages.
Yeah.
Well, these people are likely to be the first to stop paying back their loans when things get tough. And I'll give you an example because I know a lot of people have gone to Capital One and some of these online banks. Nearly half of Capital One's auto loans and 30% of their U.S. credit card loans are to subprime borrowers. That's a total of $73 billion worth of some subprime debt, and yet Capital One only has $12 billion reserved for losses.
So let me ask you this. I know the credit card companies make a lot of money on subprime, and they have to spend money to collect that as well. So, and also, in addition to that, I was reading that, and Dan, I talked about this a good 4 years ago. I mean, before COVID, I was talking about the fact that there were bank analysts who were very concerned about banks that have exposure to commercial real estate, and we're not talking about the mom.
Real estate,
Now we're not talking about the mom and pops who own this building over there with a Wawa in it or so. We're talking about the huge, ginormous,
the big ones.
Like the big, ginormous skyscraper that worth billions of dollars in L.A. that just went bankrupt. Right? That's what they're concerned about is these great, big, ginormous skyscrapers because. More companies are saying, hey, folks, work from home, or the people are saying, I don't want to go to the office, and we've got a lot of empty office space. So the concern here is that you've got some banks that may not actually have the assets at hand to handle that sort of thing. And I have no idea which banks those would be, but that's the kind of commercial real estate that I've been reading about in which you have analysts who are very concerned. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these, well, around here, Rick, I mean, you have a lot of these regional banks, like we said, like the M&T and the Capital One and that kind of thing. They have some of these real estate loans on the books, and a lot of them, like you say, I mean, there's going to be some losses in this industry. So I think the takeaway is, I mean, to cut to the chase, I'm not saying that any of these banks are going to go belly up anytime soon. That's not the message, okay? What we're saying is, and I mean, my take is, we know they bailed out Silicon Valley Bank. We know they bailed out Signature Bank. There's no guarantee they're going to keep doing that. So again, heed the FDIC limits. If you have money in these banks, you're covered up to $250,000 per account.
Right.
That means you could have an account, your wife could have an account, you could have a joint account, you could have an IRA account. I mean, they're all different, but don't go over to 250 on these banks that just got downgraded, because what they're saying is if the recession does hit, these guys are probably, more at risk than some of the other banks.
Gotcha. The other thing I'm seeing here also is they're very concerned, again, about the investments they've made at low interest rates. So you have 5, 10, 15, 30-year bonds. We saw what happened with one bank that's very specialized, not like these banks at all, but one bank, and they had long-term bonds, 30 years or so, and they have to hold them to maturity. Well, people start taking money out of this little bank with billionaire accounts, all right? So a small number of people, large amounts of money out in California and Silicon Valley, all right? Very specialized, not like the banks we have here. I just want to make sure that people understand that. And then...
No, absolutely. And I think we had this conversation back when Silicon Valley was going belly up is... basically, if any bank around here, if everybody said all at once, give me my money, the bank's going to have problems because they don't have all your money sitting in the bank.
Right. And we don't really need to worry about that.
Anybody, but
but
what happened out there, they had a run. They basically had a run. Everybody kind of found out they were in trouble. And it's not like you have to go in the bank to take your money out. You just push a few buttons on your computer and you transfer it. Next thing you know, all this money's flying out of the bank. So that's the issue.
Got it. And here, it seems, from what I'm reading anyway, Moody's is concerned about these banks, and they have long-term bonds, treasury bills that they hold because they want to have safe investments. But if they're holding them at 1%, 2%, and now you're getting like 4, 5, 6%, depending upon the length of term, then they're concerned that they might not be able to be as competitive as other banks. I think that seems to be what it is to me.
Yeah, and word of mouth. Once people get wind that, oh my gosh, my bank's in trouble, and then they're going to start saying, hey, maybe I ought to move my money out of this account. Well, that's kind of like, bad news travels fast. Good news doesn't go anywhere, but bad news travels fast.
Yeah. And what I'm saying,
and if everybody says, this bank's in trouble, and they start pulling money out, that's where you get into the issues.
And what I'm seeing from Moody's and the reports on this and the analysts is that these are not banks that are necessarily in trouble. They're just saying, hey, there's T-bills out there, E-bills, other treasury bills that are paying more than what you're invested in now. And we're going to just, step down the grading a little bit until you fix this and show that you can earn more money on your investments than you are with those existing federal notes.
Right. What they're basically saying, like I said, they're not saying any bank's going to go bankrupt in the next credit crisis. I mean, banks today are much better capitalized than they were back in 2008. But if we do get this recession that everybody's been calling for over a year, is if the recession deepens and these banks' credit losses are going to be larger than the average bank, then it won't take long to erase much of the company's profits. So that's what you want to be aware of.
And something else you're aware of, we have had a technical recession. You have they call it negative growth, which is I hate that phrase. It's so stupid. It's like congressional ethics. There's no such thing. So so I mean, but negative GDP. 2 quarters of negative GDP.
It's like government fiscal responsibility, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Or my dad, who was in the Army in counterintelligence, said, "Yeah, Army intelligence, no such thing." Same. So. It's not something really to be concerned about, I don't think, unless, of course, you're a banker and you're thinking, we need to figure out these investments so that we can keep up with the Fed's increased rates.
Yeah, I think that, like I said, the takeaway for the average person, don't keep more than $250 in a bank. Because that's going to be insured by FDIC. And, they have gone higher than that this year, but there's no guarantee that's going to continue. Well,
no, and if you're a couple of 500, and then I had a listener call and said, no, talk to your banker, because if you can put even more people on as... Oh,
yeah, you can do you and your kid, you can, whatever, I mean,
Yeah, so you put them more on the account or even as, beneficiaries. You can do it that way.
Beneficiaries will count as a separate account as well. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it.
And I know if people want to know, they can call you because you know how to do this stuff. And this is where I give your phone number, because like, I'm a client of Dan's. Exactly. You like that? Nice segue, Jensen. I'm a client of yours. I'm a really happy guy. 888-690-8820, 888-690-8820. So call Dan. He's a great guy, great advice. In fact, Sunday morning, 7 o'clock, On the Money, your show. What's going on this Sunday?
Yeah, this week we're talking to the ladies out there. I mean, ladies face their own challenges when it comes to retirement, different than men. So we're talking about the most important issue today for women in retirement planning on Sunday. So,
what's that? Do I have to wait till Sunday?
Well, I'll give you a little sneak preview. Who's going to live longer, Rick, you or your wife?
Well, all depends who gets more angry.
That's right. Who kills who first?
Yeah,
right?
She wins.
Traditionally, women live longer than men, and that's another problem that they face. Is half the time the husband dies first, you lose part of the income, and now you're going to live a while. They have their own distinct challenges, and we'll talk about how you can. How you can deal with those challenges.
Of course they live longer. After a while, we go, I'm done. I've had it. I can't live with you anymore. Oh, here comes the big one. And the woman says, okay, good. You're right. Thanks, Dan. Sunday morning, 7 o'clock. Take care, buddy.
All right. Have a good day, Rick.
You too.